when you rang him and said, I want you to ride a horse for me in the Welsh National that's got 10 stone 4.
He wasn't interested.
To celebrate 50 years of Carl's sponsorship of the Welsh Grand National, I'm here with 3-time winner Jenny Pitman and a man who needs no introduction, John Francome. Jenny, how special is the Welsh Grand National?
Well, I think for people with long distance horses, it actually gives the smaller trainer a chance as well, Mick, to win a big race over the Christmas period. You get the King George, which is a wonderful race. However, it's usually the big trainers with some serious firepower that manages to win one of those. Where when you run in the Welsh National, it's a handicap. So you've got those at the very top, and then those that were originally allocated 10 stone 4 back in the day, that gives us a chance.
And of course
I was a small trainer, so I appreciate how important it was. Make no mistake, the first year I won that race, that prize money was very precious to me, because it pays the staff's wages, pays the electricity bills, your rates and everything else. It's not just about you going away with the trophy and the prize money. You spend years getting your horse ready. You need the right jockey on it, and to get the best out of it. And I trained the winner one year, and it was the biggest certainty I ever put a saddle on. And it was the biggest certainty that anybody would ever put a saddle on.
Why was it the biggest certainty?
Which horse?
Because I knew he was a good horse, that's why. Everybody said I was over-egging my cake, and I thought, no. I'd won it the year before, so I knew what it was going to take.
Which horse, Jen?
A horse called Borough Hill Lad, who only had one clean leg from previous injuries. He came to me as a write-off, and I was lucky enough to get him right. And back in those days, the racing calendar used to have the weights come out. And so we used to have to go to Lambourne to get the racing calendar, and I thought, if this horse has got less than 10 stone, he is a stonewall certainty. Anyway, I sent somebody down to Lambourne to collect the racing calendar, where they used to drop them off. I was sat in the kitchen and I opened it, and he had got 10 stone 4. I nearly fell out of the chair. And I mean, I promise you, that was a gimme. And that probably only happens 2 or 3 times in your life when you're a trainer.
Wow.
It was a gimme. All I had to do was find the right jockey, get him out of bed, get him to come and school him, and make sure that all the work we'd put in leading up to this race, over the months leading up to it, was not going to go down the pan. Because Borough Hill Lad wasn't the brightest light on a Christmas tree. And when he made a mistake, he used to smash a hole through a fence and just leave a pile of matchwood there. And I needed a jockey that I could trust, that was a horseman, that was going to school him so that he knew every little error that he might make, because I didn't want the jockey dropping off.
So you said, right, I've got just a man, Jay Francome.
It does help, doesn't it, if you've got a Gold Cup class horse running off a 10-4 and handicap.
But you didn't know that. After the race,
Well,
I
no,
said to you, do you think I'm going to run him in the Gold Cup, Johnny? And you said to me, oh, Jen, oh, well, I'm not sure about that. The Gold Cup's a very different race to the Welsh National.
So come on then.
I didn't know it was a Gold Cup.
So come on. When you rang him and said, I want you to ride a horse for me in the Welsh National that's got 10 stone 4.
He wasn't interested. he didn't want to come and school. I said, that's fine. I said, you don't school him, you don't ride him. Simple as that. No, I'm sorry. The trouble with Johnny is I love him to bits, but he's had women around him all his life. He had 2 sisters, his mother that worshipped the ground he walked on. And so he thought he could get away with pleasing himself. I'm sorry, but this race was just so important. I couldn't afford anything to go wrong. Anyway, I think Robin Gray was staying with you. Yeah. And I got a call, because I was angry at the time. And I'm not good when I'm angry. Anyway, I got a call back a few minutes later after I put the phone down. And he says, right, I'll come and school him. He said, have him up on the schooling ground in 15 minutes. I'll get on him and pop him. So I thought, you lazy little so-and-so. Anyway, we go up to the schooling ground. And his lordship pulls up and takes him down. He had another horse with him. I can't remember what it was, actually. Might have been Corbière, for instance. Anyway, he goes down 3 fences, whizzes him up over there. That's it, Jen, that's it. I know him now. I said, no, John. I said, he's got a miss in him. I said, I'd like you to do it again. Oh, you can overschool him, Jen, you can overschool him. I said, John, I need you to do it again. So he goes down there, pings over the first 2, beautiful. I mean, it was lovely to watch. Gets to the 3rd, boom. John Francome goes up in the air like desperate damn, smacks back into the saddle, and I thought, I bet that hurt. Anyway, so he comes back, chatting away. I said, I tell you what, John, just turn him back in again and just go and pop that last again. Got it. He got it. And you watch that race. Because I don't intend to watch the races from yesteryear, I've put those races on this week. I am not kidding you. He sat there like he's lounging back on the
Never missed a beat, did he?
Never missed a beat. He was sat there. He might as well have laid back on him like that, because it was beautiful.
But Mick, when you got a horse that's travelling like that,
yeah,
you can do what you like with them.
Yeah.
It's when you're off the bridle. I rode an old horse called Narvik in the race for Neville Crump.
That was in 1980.
Yeah, I mean, Neville said he's the slowest horse you'll ever ride, and you really had to get hold of him. This horse, it was just like, you know, he'd have gone round. He could have won at 1 mile, 2 mile, 3 mile.
So when you ride Narvik, it's very different ride to riding Borough Hill Lad, because you kind of had to make Narvik's mind up for him all the time.
Yeah, he was just slow and lazy. This is a class horse that had 10 stone 7 on his back.
And a bit more.
And a bit more. And a little bit more, yeah.
So come on then. So when 10 stone 7
yeah.
on the day after Boxing Day,
yeah.
which means Christmas is going to be not a lot of food.
Yeah, not a lot of fun, not a lot of presents. I don't know, I did 10-10 or something like that, which was pretty good for me.
Yeah.
But the thing, and you know from riding, Chepstow and Lingfield, when they get wet, you'll get horses that go on soft ground that won't even get down to the start of those 2 horses.
Yeah.
And you need something that's got plenty of, that just copes with that clay soil.
Yeah.
Can you just explain on that? If you watch Borough Hill Lad, he galloped over that ground that day like it was good ground. And he was the only horse I ever knew that went the same on good ground or bottomless ground. He was like he was on skis. He just went over the top of it. He didn't get into it. He was a great big heavy horse. His conformation was awful. He was so straight in front. He had a really bad injury on one of his hind legs as a young horse, and he was a nightmare to train. I always bandaged him after a race. I looked after his legs myself, because he was precious. He was precious for a lot of reasons, because he was not ever so bright. I used to say, come on, Buzz. Somebody came to photograph him. Please look intelligent. And he'd just walk out the box like he was a mule.
He had a cut on his back leg, didn't he?
Oh, horrid. And the nerves, because it didn't have the best of treatment, I might say. The nerves were very close to the top. And so if he knocked that, when Johnny's pulling up in the Hennessy, he was holding his leg up like he'd broken it. But we were aware of it, and so we were trying to keep him sound in front. That leg behind would put him on, make him use one leg in front more than the other. So we were always trying to repair and protect. But he was a good horse. I mean, gobsmackingly unbelievable.
So what was it like then for you riding a horse that good round there, Johnny?
Mate, he was a joy because he was a big, strong horse. He was just like Denman. He was the only horse I really compare to him. You know, how big was he? He must have been getting on for 17 hands, wouldn't he?
No, it'd have been a 16.3, John.
But a full 16.3.
But he was. The problem with him is he was so heavy and so straight in front. I don't like horses that are straight in front because their suspension, everything comes up straight up their leg and into their shoulder. And
when you're a jockey, you don't care what's going on.
No, that's your problem.
As long as he's driving what's in front of him.
But when you watch that race and you watch you never looked like you had one moment's worry riding a horse around.
No, not at all. No, but he was just a very good horse. And he was, for a big horse, Jen said he was straight in front, he might have been, but he covered the ground, everything was easy for him. You know, he won a Hennessy with 12 stone. You have 12 stone in Hennessy or something.
You were incredible on him
He had a lot of weight on him in the Hennessy. Everything, all you had to do, the only thing you never did with him was just let him sort it out himself. If he wanted to get in close, just keep a little bit of a hold on him, and he was absolutely fine. If you just just did that on him, he was lost.
I knew him when he was a kid and he was riding Red Paul, show jumping. And I knew he and Borough Hill Lad, because of his horsemanship, were going to be a marriage made in heaven. And that's why I was so angry that Sunday morning. I really was irritable that he didn't want to make the effort, because this is my Rolls Royce and you don't want to get out of bed to come and have a go on it. You must be joking. Stay where you are. I'll get somebody else. She told me he'd fallen
badly over hurdles, I probably wouldn't have gone at all.
But the Welsh National, Johnny, like when you won it on Narvik, like how big a deal was it to win the race for?
Oh, listen, it's as Jen said, it's a handicap to begin with. So you know, there's plenty of people going there with a chance. It's always a war of attrition. You know, you never get an easy run in the National. You know, he was an exception. 99 times out of 100, you know, you're riding something that's really had to, you know, get to the bottom of whatever it's got to get in front. You know, you have that little bit of a run downhill at Chepstow, and then you uphill, and it really gets to the. But you have a horse with a lot of heart to win that.
But when I watched you ride Narvik, there's several times where you had to really press him to jump, which is something you don't see you do very often.
No, but he was different. He was a slow old horse, and you knew he had a little bit of something in him. So you know, you just get old. He was just wanted a bit of encouragement.
He was a proper old-fashioned.
He was an old-fashioned. Yeah. He was slow and he was old-fashioned. He'd been round the block a lot. Colin Hawkins used to ride him, and he said you'll never ride anything slower than this, and he was right. But the further he went, and it was, you know, it was made for him, you know, and you get some, you know, plenty of slow horses that eventually, after you've gone 2.5, 3 miles, they start, you know, finding their gear.
So what was it like when you won on Borough Hill Lad, coming back into the winner's enclosure?
It's always better to ride a winner for Jenny than getting beaten on 1-4.
Don't mess it up. No, we had some lovely owners that were pig farmers in the north, Jim Shaw and David Shaw and Dougie Shaw, and Dougie, unfortunately, had cancer when he died. It was horrible, but he worshipped Borough Hill Lad. And they used to have a bet. You wouldn't know whether they'd had a fiver on 500 quid, 5,000 or what they'd had on. And I'd said for a long time how good Borough Hill Lad was. And when he'd got the weight in the Grand National, oh, you're running Borough Hill Lad in the Welsh National, Jen? Yeah. And how do you reckon he'll go? I said, well, to be perfectly honest, I'm not a gambler. I didn't bet. I said, I think he's a certainty. Anyway, what do? They all pitch up. So they're down at Chepstow when we get there. And what was so funny is they backed Borough Hill Lad to win the Welsh National. So when Johnny comes in, I know this. So when Johnny comes in, I said, you know, I'm thinking of running this horse in the Gold Cup. And that's when he said, oh, I don't know about that, you know, this. And yeah, granted, it is very different.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Shaws had the belief in the horse that I had, and they let all the money ride from the Welsh National onto the Gold Cup, and they won 90. Can't remember whether it's 95 or 98,000 pounds, and they wanted to be paid in cash, and they were going into this northern bookmaker apparently for 3 weeks, and when he gave them or threw the last lot of money at him, told them to naff off and don't darken his doorstep again. So I think Corals may have had a lucky escape that day.
But again, that's another thing. You know, long-term sponsorships. Coral have been part of this for quite a long time.
Corals have, and do you know, we need to treasure those people. They're good to us. There used to be a dance there, I think it was in Gillipus's year, before the Welsh National, which was fabulous. They used to invite you to lunch on the day, but I was always too busy and, to be perfectly honest, not in for eating in case it ended up on my shoes. But I said to them, the only thing I don't like about you guys, you never give the trainer a trophy. So we go home with nothing to say you've won this race. And they actually had a silver salver done for me, and it's ever so nice. And it's got all my 3 national winners on, which they will not realise how much it meant to me. Yeah. But it was just a little memento that said, yeah. I mean, my kids will have it down the scrapyard.
I do remember one stage, if you won a decent race there at Chepstow, what was John's surname, the guy that he was in?
Saunders, was it?
Hughes.
John Hughes.
Oh, yeah, that's
John Hughes. He had an in with somebody in London. And if you won this lovely little silver horse, and I thought, you know, that's really nice. I got it for winning something. But you needed a pair of them. So I went to go and look and get another one. It was about £5, you know. It was as cheap as chips, this thing. So one of the lads won it wasn't the Welsh National. It was one of the Welsh champion or something. Came in proud as punch, had this little silver horse, showed everybody. And I knew it was worth nothing. So when he was out riding the next race, I bent its legs up and I made it sit down like a dog. When he came back, it was sitting there on the bench. He went absolutely mad because I told him it's worth nothing. He was all right. Yeah.
I've got things in there that are worth nothing.
Yeah, throw them out. No good. They're not worth anything. It's no good having them. Yeah.
My kids say, this place is like a shrine to Corbière. What would I want any other pictures other than my grandchildren and my horses in my house for? What else would have more meaning to me than those? Nothing.
So when he won in 82, how big a deal was that, Corbière winning the Welsh National?
Well, we'd got Gillipus, gone to the last and crashed. That was the year Ragtrade won the National. So I need to find out whether I've also got a national horse. The difference between Borough Hill Lad and Corbière, if you could have moulded the two together, you would have had a world champion. Because Borough Hill Lad was quicker, covered more ground, but Corbière was totally and utterly reliable. And when he met a fence, he would put maximum effort into everything he did. I watched the race again this week, and when he pulled up, do you know what?
He was knackered.
I was exhausted watching him because he gave everything, and he did that every time he ran. He gave you his last ounce. Where Borough Hill Lad, if he made a hole in one, it didn't matter. And Fred Winter said about him, he makes me laugh, that horse. He said, I used to ride one like him that had ploughed through a fence. He said, and I'm sure he looked back at me and said, are you still there? And that was Borough Hill Lad. But Corbière was different, wasn't as quick, probably wasn't beautifully made horse, but didn't quite have the speed of Borough Hill Lad. But he was.
Well, so when he won the Welsh National, it was a big deal for you.
I thought, I know where you're going.
Really?
I know where you're going next. And strangely enough, we had some owners at the time, so this is now leading up to the Grand National. And I'd said to Dave, this is the best chance I'll ever have of winning the Grand National. I want my mum and dad to go there. So we're now talking April 84. And I had one chap who had horses in, and he only had one horse with me, and he used to ring up every day and say, hi, it's so-and-so here. He said, how's my horse today? So I'd say, oh, it's absolutely fine, basically the same as yesterday. And always at the end of this conversation, he'd say, and how is Corbière? And after Corbière won the National, one of the bookmakers came up to Dave and he said, how's it been for you? And he said, well, good. He said, apart from one of your so-and-so owners, he said, that absolutely fleeced us. And that was this owner that had little, next to nothing horse that was short on ability. You know, nice bonny little horse, but didn't have a lot of ability. But he kept asking me, and how is Corbière? But after he won the Welsh National, I thought, no way you're going next, son.
And then Steersby, how different was he compared to the other two?
Steersby, he was a nightmare. Graham Bradley was the making of him because he kept falling or on the seat in the jockey or whatever. And
he just retired, I think, like 86, wasn't he? You retired 85?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
He said to me one day, because I just couldn't get him to perform. And the reason he didn't perform is because he didn't want to make the effort. Steersby, this was, not the jockey. And he said, I tell you what, Jenny, he said, next time I ride Steersby, he said, put a snaffle bridle on him with a cross noseband. He said, no, make the running on. And he bolted up. And then we went on from there. And although he didn't make the running in the Welsh National, if you watch the race, you can see that he got nothing out of him that he didn't say, I'm having this. Graham Bradley at the fences, he was saying, come on, I'm having this. Because he was quite a highly strung horse. If you could see him down at the start getting a bit buzzy. And we tried everything to get him to relax and chill out, which is how I like my horses to be on the gallops. We used to just hack them. I mean, we'd go round man down bottom and up the hill. I didn't want those horses to pull too hard, waste their energy. I wanted them to be comfortable with the riders, and they didn't increase the pace till they were asked. And if you watch Graham on that horse, he as he gets to every fence, he's saying, come on, I'm having this. And then the horse did it, but he was a bit hairy. I think going back to Corbière, he had a rough passage, you know, in that race. Watching that the other day, it was he got mullered on the first bend.
But he got battered a bit, didn't he, by a few of the others?
It was a rough race, considering there were so few runners. What was that about?
Jan, just explain Graham Bradley saying about the snaffle bridle and the cross noseband. What did that do to him then, Steersby? There'd be loads of people watching this thinking, oh, I've got a dodgy horse, but what did it actually do?
I think if something's not working, you don't chuck everything out, but you need somebody you can communicate with, like your jockey. Your feedback from your jockey is vitally important. And so when a jockey gets off a horse, it's not just a matter of snatching your saddle off and clearing off. I liked working with people that wanted to work with me for the benefit of the horse and the benefit of the owners. So I tried lots of different things with Steersby, and when Graham Bradley put forward that suggestion, you got nothing to lose. And there's nothing cruel in any way with a snaffle bridle. I love them. They're my favourite bit of kit, or nylon bits, where the horse thinks it's in control. And just a cross noseband. And in those days, we just had the bit so it fitted kindly in the horse's mouth. So it just made a little crease in the cheeks. Nowadays, they've got them up here somewhere. And they have these nosebands that are really tight.
The cross noseband, how popular was that then? Because nowadays, a lot of people have cross nosebands.
We used them for a different purpose. We left the bit in a comfortable position in the horse's mouth, and I always used to have quite a fat snaffle, so it was kind in the horse's mouth. You won't bully a horse's mouth. If you bully a horse's mouth, all you're going to end up doing is having it fighting against you. And sometimes a horse will respond better to something softer and gentler than something that's like a citation bridle, which a lot of people used in those days, Ask Golden Fleece. We had to take that off him because it made him worse. But he had, Golden Fleece had 2 gears. It was either walking or running away. He didn't have another gear. We used to lead him off another horse. That's how bad he was.
Jan, how many horses did you train? Because I was saying to somebody the other day, you never trained many, but you had a lot of good horses through your hands. And your dad was a big player, wasn't he? I remember you telling me your dad used to sit and watch them, you know, during the day when the lads had gone home, and he'd say there was something wrong with that horse, he's just not eating or he's doing something or other.
John, I was very blessed to... My dad lived up in Leicestershire, but his knowledge, because he was a stockman, a farmer at a small farm, so didn't matter whether it was a bullock or a sheep or a pig, if its conformation was right, he knew about it, and his stockmanship and just the knowledge you get from those aged people, you can't read in books.
No.
And he was a godsend to me. I used to go to the sales when I was looking for a horse, and I used to think with his brain and look with my eyes, because he was, if it wasn't right, I tell you what, I bought 6 horses one summer at the sales. And I said, my dad didn't come with us. And I said, kept ringing him up, and I said, Dad, you come down and, when are you coming down to see these horses? You told me you were coming down at the weekend. Oh, I'll be down shortly. Anyway, another few days ago, Dad, do you know what day you're coming down to see those horses? Because, you know, they've been in now, and I said, we've wormed them, and they're ready to go out. I'll be down at the weekend. He said, anyway, there can't be too much wrong with them. I said, what makes you say that? Because you wouldn't be so bloody keen on me looking at them else, he said. And we had Wilsford, Esheness.
But how many horses would you have in the yard at one time?
Well, I started off, mine was the last hospital they went to before they were totally written off. So when people used to look round, we used to go along the boxes and take the bandages off them and hide them in the bed until they'd gone and go back and put them on again. So I only had 8 or 11 in the first early days. And even after winning the Grand National with Corbière, things didn't change much.
So how many horses would you have had after you won the National?
20.
Wow.
22.
So, you know, so she had a lot of good horses through her hands with very little ammunition, but attention to detail.
Yeah.
I can remember, I remember you telling me your dad had been watching this horse and telling you that it wasn't right. Something he'd been watching him in the afternoon.
My dad used to go and wander around the yards, which I loved to do in the afternoon. You learn so much just looking over the stable doors. You know, some horses will be lying down resting, some will be stood asleep on 3 legs, some will be stood head over the door. Wilsford, he never rested. His head used to be over the door. He would see a gnat go by. And this particular day, oh, it was so funny. I said to my dad, where you been then, Dad? I've been having a wander around, making a few observations. I used to think, oh, no.
Here we go.
Here we go. He said, that black horse, he said, in the top corner box. He said, what's that? I said, where do you mean? And he said, where do you mean? I said, that's the Illiwacker. He's got a problem, he has, you know. I said, what? He said, he's got a problem. I said, what kind of problem? He said, he's got something wrong with his mouth. So I said, but we only had the dentist in last week. He can't have. Anyway, Alan Walker was doing the next day, who was our vet. And I said, Alan, would you have a look in the Illiwacker's mouth? Because we had looked and couldn't see anything. And felt up inside the cheek, see if he'd got any sores or what. And my dad wouldn't tell you what made him recognise it. It's got a problem. You sort it. This is your test. Everything was a test. And so Alan goes out there with Dave, has a look in the horse's mouth, can't find anything. Alan comes in, the kitchen at Weathercock, and he says to me, Dad, I can't find anything in that horse's mouth, George. And my dad said, well, you better go back and have another bloody look then. Anyway, Alan goes back and has another look, and the horse had a tiny tooth coming up in its bottom gum, just sticking up from its gum. Very, very thin, no thicker than my fingernail. Anyway, he said to Dave, I think we can nick this, Dave, and get this out. And he nicked it and got it out. Alan comes back in. He said, how did you know he'd got a problem then, George? He said, oh, well, I'd been watching him eating his hay. He said he was drawing at it like this. They had hay racks. He said he was drawing at it like this. He said Osbert's got a normal mouth, snatches it like that out the hay rack. He said he'd have been all day eating that little bit. That's the knowledge that you're not going to read in a book. It's like horses got a problem in their mouth. Do you know what I used to do? Get a carrot, snap it in half and give them quite a big chunk and see if they're going to grind it or if it's all falling out its mouth again. Quite simple to do. If horses got sore mouth, it's not going to eat its food properly. It's not going to grind its food. So what you're putting in is not going to be digested properly. So all the fuel you're putting in there is going to come out the other end without supplying any fire. Yeah. Like the fire there. If I chuck slack on it, I get a load of smoke and no heat. If I make sure I've got my logs and the dry and all the rest of it, I get what I want.
Yeah. So, Johnny, what sort of a test is Chepstow Welsh National for a jockey?
It's easy for a jockey, but what it's got going for it, if you've got a horse that isn't the best jumper, they've got different bellies to the fences. They've got a really good slope on them. So if you've got one that's not very good and a little bit lazy in its front end, they can get in and they just got that little bit more time to get their front end up. They've got a proper slope on them. And by the time you get down to the start, if they haven't run at Chepstow or Lingfield or something, whether they're going to go, it's like any other race, Mick. You're either going well and you've got a little bit of room, or you're not and you're struggling, and that's it. And if you're struggling to go with the pace, you just want
it's a long way home.
Yeah, it is a long way.
But there's a hell of a buzz. It's the one thing I found working there. There's a hell of a buzz on that day with that crowd, isn't it?
Oh, it's great atmosphere.
If you don't leave when the sparrows get up in the morning, you ain't going to get there.
Yeah.
It's jammed from the bridge right to the race course. And then you're going to be queuing to get in. So as soon as the sparrows get up in the morning, you want to have your Weetabix and consider getting off. I mean, we had to be left by 9 o'clock in the morning at the very latest, else you weren't going to get there. Of course, I used to like my horses to be at the races 3 hours before they ran, always, so that they'd chill out and have a stretch and have a pee. Because you run a horse with a belly full of water and he ain't going to run very well.
But the general public, they like a good long distance handicap, don't they? That's the bottom line. Yeah. Everyone's got an opinion. If you go there, and it's, a grade 1 race, there's only going to be 2 or 3 basically got a chance, but there'll be 20 people go to Chepstow on Boxing Day. Too much to drink, anything to get away from the in-laws.
But you never went there where they were all scrapping and...
No. It's
a
safe. Boisterous crowd.
It was a family day. You could take the kids. My kids, when the bank was there, oh, my kids, I just wanted to kill them. They used to run along there and jump off that bank, off the top of it, and roll down it, no matter how wet and muddy it was, pretending they were jockeys. I used to pretend they were nothing to do with me. I promise you, if I could have had the grandchildren without having the kids, I wouldn't have bothered with the kids.
Yeah.
It's never that easy, Jenny. It's never that easy.